You know, if I drive around, there's never a spot out front. If I park over on the other side, I'll walk over here and there's always spots.
Park where the sheriffs are.
Oh, well, back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where I came from.
Oh, I was thinking of start picking.
This week, the last 3 days, they have just
Yep,
come
dropped.
down. My neighbor across the street's raking them all up, and he keeps looking at my house and raking them all up and looking at the house.
Because they keep.
So, no, just because they're piling up so quick, and I come out of the house, and he looks at me and says, I said, I know, Paul, it's conference week. I'm overwhelmed. I'll get it next week.
Sure, my coverage was showing up 1 minute. Store.
Has before.
Yeah.
We're gonna be on, county administrator and commissioners.
Oh, because we're going back.
Yes, yeah, we did a little bit out of order.
A week?
Did you fire the guy at the store that was?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, okay.
And press charges.
Oh, you did?
I had to. Yeah, because.
It's official 6 o'clock.
Coming up on this
Right,
guy.
Yeah.
so.
I think they
But
would
everybody's made.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm
And most people in this situation that I was in was completely full. So, for protecting hopefully another business that he applies to, that was my goal.
I see.
I don't want a dollar from him.
No,
Yeah.
I'm an account manager.
All right, well,
for
you know,
Granger
it-
from my company.
I was talking with Penny about this, you know,
That's okay.
Account manager
I don't
for
mind.
FedEx. It was more
but I said,
flexibility.
you know, it would not surprise me if that guy still.
DIW.
I know my brother, he retired, but he's still, he's a truck driver. He
I
retired.
left transportation
When
after
you
42 years.
he pushes ass like that,
Yeah.
you'll choke.
you know,
Do you know what I mean? So I can go from like
I worked for
0
Railway.
to
I was
100.
in sales on the Railway.
Good to know.
Just so you know. And it's not pretty. It's not pretty. It's almost. And he complains. Yep.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
I worked.
And I'm like,
His guy's not. You guys want to
really
start?
hurt by something. It's gonna be something really bad like that. I have no mercy.
Oh, wow.
Okay, folks, I have 6:01. We're gonna call to order the meeting of the Budget Committee for October 23rd. If we could rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. We'll go ahead and do roll call and start with Dennis.
Dennis Dote, Assistant City Manager of Auburn.
Leroy Walker, Councilman, Ward 5.
Susan Longchamps, councilman for, where am I? Ward 2, sorry. Jeez, it's been a long day.
David Chittum, Lewiston City Councilor.
John DeSantis, Selectman Poland.
Paula Maselli, Ward 6, Lewiston, but I cover Durham and Green as well up here. Lisa Chesery Minot.
Bob Reed, Ward 7, Lewiston.
Kevin Nichols, Turner.
Deirdre Smith, Lisbon.
Thank you. Can I have a motion for the minutes from last week, Make a please? motion to accept the minutes as well.
Second.
All right, all in favor? Anyone opposed? All right, that's carries. Before we start review of budgets for this week, we have 2 items that I'd like to address for old business. Last week, when we discussed the changes to the EMA line, that did not pass the updates that we wanted to make, and the week before, we had adjusted the revenue line up, and we need to now make a motion to bring that back down to the original because it can only be half of the expenses. So to that end, if we can have a motion, I believe what we're doing is we are making a motion on what the commissioner's line item was.
I would,
Yep, yep,
I would make a motion to accept the change in the EMA to reflect requirements of law.
okay, thank you. So we have a Bob Reed and a second by Paula. All in favor? All right, anyone opposed? All right, that carries. Second item of business is last week, we were presented with the cap in regards to the funding for the jail and the county corrections. We tabled that because we wanted to have a little bit more discussion and understand a little bit more. Jeff, do you have any more information that you want to share before we vote on that?
There was some more research. To answer, one of the questions was, why could we have raised the 4% each year? The answer was yes, the county could have, since 2022. The county did not. Talking to people back then, they were advised not to. The legislation was not clear. It still really isn't clear now, but that was the advice given to them at the time. So here we are today, without raising that money, looking at the need we have now. The growth, Clarice will chime in on the growth factor, but we believe that with the growth, how is that, the growth factor will be enough?
So the law says that we can either take 5% or the growth factor, whichever is larger. We don't know, because the growth factor, because we're taxing on 2025, I have to wait for 2025 property valuation, so I don't know what the growth factor will be. It may be enough to cover what we need, it may not. We don't know at this point. I get the estimates at the end of November, middle of November. The finals don't even come until January, so I won't even know really until the middle of November, an estimate on that.
Okay.
We'd still like the budget committee to vote to go past the cap if we have to, if the growth factor isn't enough.
Okay. Were there any other questions that anybody would like to talk about on this issue? Mr. Chittum, you had some reservations last week, or are you all set?
I did, and I've looked at the law 4 times since then, and I'm
Clearer?
still just as confused as I was before. It seems to me as though section 2 of the law says you can do this, and here's how. And section 3 says you can't do it unless the legislature tells you it's all right to do. And I still have trouble reconciling those two. I appreciate that we don't have the final numbers until way too late in our budget process, but that still wouldn't preclude us. If the first section of the law, which tells us how we can go about raising that cap, stands alone, then we wouldn't have to be frozen at the 5.3 million. We could increase it by a number that is at least 4%, because we know that the growth factor is going to exceed 4% dramatically. According to my calculations, it's like 22%. Which would take us to nearly 6.3 million, if I'm not mistaken. So we could, I suppose, opt to take the 5.3 up to 5.9 or some number that we're fairly confident will be below the calculated cap once the final data comes in. But in the final analysis, it doesn't really make any difference, because that money is going to be assessed to the municipalities anyway. No matter whether we put it in line 7 or line 28B, it will still be assessed to the municipalities. I think the only advantage of us increasing the cap now is that it would establish a new base level for next year. So that's my little take on
You look at
this.
section 2 of that as well, it does list that you can do it based on extraordinary circumstances as well. I don't know if you caught that.
That's
So
right.
I would say that this is one of those circumstances, and one of those was unfunded state mandates, which I would argue that the majority of these increases are unfunded state mandates, so.
Go ahead, sir.
Clarice, sort of related to this based on what you were saying, when you talk about assessed valuations for the towns, is that based on what they're reporting or the equalized state valuation?
It's the state valuation.
So it's a state, okay.
Great. All right, are we ready to move on this? Okay, I'm gonna make a motion that we pass the cap, is that the proper word for it? That we pass the cap for the jail and corrections officers for 2025.
Do we need a motion as far as which way we go, or is that a separate motion, or?
The motion, which way you go, either do you agree to do it or not agree to do it, yes.
Are we good with that?
I'm good with that, I'll
Okay,
second
you'll
it.
second it, all right. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay.
No, I was just waiting to make
You were
sure
waiting
she
for
got
she
them
got
all,
'em
'cause I would put my hand down too quick, and then I go,
Yeah.
oh, she's gonna slap
Gonna
me.
give you a heck, okay. All right, so our first line item for review tonight is the county administrators and the commissioners' budget. So, start it.
It's a middle tab, sort of, well, it's middle. Halfway down.
Okay. You are?
I'm
Okay.
here with it, I have it in
Okay.
front of me, you guys have any questions, you want me to talk about anything new in it, or?
Does anybody have any questions? Mr. Walker, go ahead.
The only,
Yeah, 62,020. We haven't used any actual in 2024, but you increased it to 1,500 or 1,500.
yes, sir, that's for the Maine County Commissioners Association Conference, which I believe we did have two that attended this year, so that money will come out. And then for the new administrator, I do plan on attending some conferences.
Okay, so it's gonna cost the 1,500.
I would surmise, yes. And that's gonna be pretty tight as it is.
I think, Mr. Chittum, you had a question, go ahead.
Yes, I did, thank you. Wages and salaries have gone up 8.2%. Last year, they went up 3.1. Is there additional staff, or?
They hired me, and before I believe they were doing interim for the past couple of years. It was a year or so, a year and a half of interim.
Wasn't technically interim, but
Well, the last year you weren't, right? The last year, you,
there was some transition. I was doing both jobs, so I was getting paid out of various things.
Yep,
Eric was interim for a while.
and Eric
And
was,
Eric,
Interim for a while, so there probably wasn't,
Okay, so this represents a salary base as opposed to a COLA?
represents my salary, administrative assistant salary, and the county commissioner's salaries, which are frozen, of course.
Thank you.
I have a question about the professional fees, 60010. Do you think we'll use all 50 next year, or can that be dropped down to 45?
I think we'll use all 50 next year. We have a couple of union contracts to negotiate and other things that are on the horizon, so.
Anybody have any other questions for this line item? Go ahead, Mr. Chittum.
Well, are you ready for a motion?
Go ahead.
All right, I will move passage of the county administrator's budget at 266,444.
Second.
Paula seconds it, okay. All in favor?
Thank you.
Anyone opposed? All right, that carries. All right, next up is human resources. Hi, how are you?
How about you?
Hillary?
Hi. All right, so I'm Hillary, for those of you who do not know me. I am the HR director at Amstead County. Last year, we started the HR department into a full-time. We've been transitioning. The year before, I was half finance, half HR. This year is the full HR year. So we decided we needed one because we have 154 employees. We have 2 unions. And this year, we've been monitoring and adjusting for this year's budget as things that have come up and that we need. So, yeah, do you have any questions? Yes.
Paula, go ahead.
What are the awards?
The awards are for, so when we had employees who retired, we all scrounged our lines to try to find a retirement gift. So this is for a retirement gift and for like employee appreciation for people who make it like 5, 10, 15, 25 years.
How many people retiring this year?
This year, we have had, well, for next year, I'm at least expecting 3 in our patrol CID division, a couple up in the jail, maybe some in the general government side. There's quite a bit that are coming up.
It's a line that I asked her to add, she's here floundering with it, I did ask to add that line to her, 'cause I think it's important to recognize the employees for awards, not only just people retiring, but maybe employees that do something special, stuff like that.
Lorraine, go ahead.
Advertising's up 100% from last year's budget.
Yes, we have a lot of, we wanna do job fairs, because like I said, we have a lot of retirements coming up, so we're gonna have to get a lot of new employees. So it's for job fairs, advertising on Indeed, and job postings.
It's expensive.
It is getting, everything's expensive.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? All right, would anybody like to make a motion?
I'll motion for the 94,651.
All right, Kevin, Paula the second, all in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay,
Thank you,
that passes, thank you. All right, treasurer and finance is up next.
That's me.
That's you.
Let's see, so, before we get into the questions, I just wanna throw this out here. In '23 and, some of '24, we were short-staffed. In fact, in '23, for a brief time, we didn't even have really a finance department for a few weeks. So that's why the numbers seem to be a little bit higher this year than they have been the last two. Just wanted to kind of cover that in an overall. I was kind of doing two jobs. Now I'm back, I'm a full staff.
Does anybody have any questions? Go ahead, Mr. Chitter.
What's the difference between printing and reproducing and printing and engraving?
So one of those is the contract on the BBB contracts that Holly enters. The other one is envelopes, checks printing, stuff that we have to send out to printing.
Okay, thank you. And training and education is up 250%.
Yep, we have, like I said, new staff. I have 2 new staff that need training. We also have a new, during all that transition, we had a new software. And I need to train the department heads and my staff, really, they need more training on that software. So I upped it for that.
And is all that training, you said department heads, is all that training in this budget as opposed to spread into the sheriff's department and the jail and so on? Okay. All right, thank you.
All right, there, Mr. Walker.
7190, you got 1,500.
Yep. So my payroll computer in my in the department is about 4 years old. I always try to keep something in there in case it dies when it starts getting that old, because we can't rent payroll. And so that's in there just in case, to cover that in case it dies.
But that's a guessing game, right?
It is, yeah. If
But
I
I
don't
noticed-
have it in there, then
I noticed in most of your, I don't know who put in the capital, but most capital are saying that they, to cover their computer or their software or whatever, that most of them are all saying they need like $1,200. And I've noticed in other budgets, it's $1,500 all the time within the departments. I'm just wondering why capital thinks it's only $1,200 to keep, the computer and hardware and software, but you feel it's $1,500 and others do too.
well, everything is going up, and for payroll, we have, we try to have, we don't get like the cheapest. I mean, some of the computers in the county can be, less RAM or whatever, but payroll, to run the software has to be a little bit more. So, I mean, it's just a guess, but we go on the higher end for our computer.
Thank you.
Other questions? No? Would anybody like to make a motion?
Make a motion to accept the 214-203 budget.
And a second?
Second,
All right, Mr. Walker, second. All in favor? Anyone opposed? All right, that carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is the county. All right. All right, this is the one I need to pay attention to. Well, yeah, these are, all right. Yeah, these are all the revenues. Most of these are the revenues.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's not that, should have
Brilliant.
maybe at the meeting.
Thank you. Thanks, Andy. Keep a red tag on for me.
So this is the miscellaneous revenue that is not in all the other departments, and it's also where the reserves are. So we're trying to establish, vacation reserve and a general fund county reserve, each 50 grand, and the other is, interest on bank accounts, rent from the court, and that's the appropriated fund balance that we've designated to help with the, cost.
I think we talked about the vacation reserve a little bit in the past, a couple weeks ago. I think Mr. Chittum brought up the vacation reserve, trying to establish that account so that people resign or leave, we have money to pay them out, the vacation that's owed to them, and the salary lines can no longer sustain that. So that's why that account's in there. And then a reserve account is, you know, for obvious reasons.
How much do you allow to carry over from one year to the other for
It's
vacation
different
time?
in each side. So I believe it's 45 days. Hillary? It's 45 days.
So for the general government side, it's 45 days. For the union, it's anything for in the prior year, so it can be anywhere from 2 weeks to 5 weeks.
Depending on the tenure of the
Depending on-
employee.
Yeah, how long they've been here.
And what's the sick policy? Is that the same thing? Do you pay?
Yeah, sick policy is
We
not
do
paid
not.
out.
You do not pay out sick
No.
policy, sick time if it's not used? Okay. I have a question on the American Relief Funds. Was that just ARPA money that was left over? What was that?
That's the interest that we made on it?
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that's why we're not budgeting anything for that next year, okay. I had a question on the next line, on the return on investments. We have $51,000 received this year, but only $40,000 budgeted for next. Is that just a guess, or?
It is a guess, but interest rates are going down. So I expect that it will be less than we got this year.
Okay. Does anybody, go ahead, sir?
Yeah, what happened to the $12.5 million of county taxes?
What happened to it?
It's budgeted at zero.
Because we haven't done the assessment yet. For the new year, we haven't done any assessment yet. For 25. We don't do that until the budget process is done, so we know how much we're gonna assess.
Okay, so that's, this process is going to end up with that line item?
Correct.
All right, okay. And I do have questions about vacation and county reserves. I understand the intent of a vacation reserve is to pay off that vacation that's unused when employees retire. What is the county reserve?
To have some cash on hand for things that happen, unforeseen events that happen.
You and I have talked about this, and I have a philosophical problem with essentially telling my employer that I need a raise so I can create a savings account. This is a very tough year on top of a tough year last year, and it doesn't strike me as being the right time to set up a $50,000 savings account in case I need it. I understand that the desire, and it's a valid argument, but I think the timing is wrong this year. So I would suggest that the county reserve be eliminated and drop down to zero, and I'll make that motion when everyone else has the questions answered.
I also have a question on the surplus and the fund balance. You have an estimated of 1.7 million that's left over, so if we added to that, that would drop that figure down, correct? Okay. I would also like to propose raising that to 200,000. If there's a motion, because 1.7, what is the percent that you have to have on hand as a minimum? Do you have one based on
I don't know what
policy?
the percent is off the top of my head, but it's about 2 million they recommend with our size.
How many days does that represent in the budget?
That's what I really want to ask. Yeah.
When I first figured it, it was about 30.
Okay.
Does the county have a fund balance policy?
We do, it's very old, but we do.
So does it set a percentage limit? There's likely a limit in there, that's why I'm asking, I don't know.
I'm not sure.
I don't know if we'd be putting you in trouble by by raising that, potentially putting you below the limit. I'm just asking.
We've always been below it, so.
Go ahead.
How often are we financing items that we have to pay interest on that maybe we can don't have to do that if we create a surplus fund? The, sheriff's cars, anything like that, are those bonded, financed?
Right now, we're financing, we're leasing them, and they're for 4 years.
Are there any other questions? Go ahead.
Well, I think since we don't have the county taxes, I don't believe we can take a motion on operating revenue. But I would move that we reduce operating total expenditures from $100,000 to $50,000.
Was that your motion?
Yes.
Okay, and is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, Kevin seconds it. All in favor? All opposed? All right, that doesn't carry, and it wouldn't have carried anyway because we are only 10 people here this evening. I'll bring that to my notes.
With a note.
Yeah, I will do that.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sure.
Madam Chair, could I make a motion on the same thing as Mr. Chitterson just did, but I'd like to only reduce that 50,000 to 25 for the county.
Sure.
Instead of 50.
So you'd like to make that motion to be a total of 75,000?
Correct.
Okay,
I'll second that.
all right, Walker, and all in favor? All opposed? All right, that still doesn't carry. I will bring both. We'll just have discussions with the commissioners in a couple weeks on that. We do need to review the revenue line items, though. That does have to be reviewed and passed. Go ahead.
I will move, we recommend revenues of 192430.
Okay, and is there a second on that? Second. Paul, the second. All in favor? Any opposed? That's me. All right, that still will pass, I believe, because we're not changing it. All right, we're gonna move on to auditing. I had one question on auditing. We've had a consistent price for 2 years. Is it going up to 19.5?
Yes, because, they hadn't increased in several years, so they are increasing.
I'll motion for that amount.
All right, and. is there a
Second.
All right, Mr. Chair, second. All in favor? Anyone opposed? All right, that carries. All right, we're moving on to interest. Oh, shoot. No, go ahead. Are there any questions on the interest line? Go ahead.
This is, Madam Treasurer, through 3/4 of the year,
Yes.
and are these monthly payments?
Yep, it has been, this is for our TAN, it has been paid off as of now, but we did go over the 70. We went to close to 80,000 for this year, total at the end.
All right. So some of the notes have been retired then?
So, yeah, it's our one TAN. We have a TAN, a tax anticipation note that carries us from about January until the taxes come in.
Okay, all right, because if we take 133% of the 69, you've exceeded the 90,000. But if some of those notes have been retired and there are no new notes. How do I say that? No new notes. There we go. Coming due. I'm assuming that the 90,000 is going to cover everything that we've got for next year.
It should cover for next year. Yeah.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr.
Yeah, I just want to clarify clearly. You only take out one tax
One
anticipation
tax.
note per year,
Yep,
and you retire it as soon as you've got the money from the town.
correct,
And that's where we are. You've got a little bit of interest for last month.
right. Yeah, it was paid off in September.
But you don't have a bunch of notes floating out in the internet.
No,
Okay.
It's
it's
once
just
a
the one.
year,
It's just the one,
just until the revenue comes in.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
Is there a motion?
So
I'll
moved.
make-
Oh,
Second.
Kevin and Mr. Reed, all in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay, that carries. Fast, I can't keep up. Employee benefits are next.
So health insurance, we won't know for another week or so. The rest are based on current usage and estimates for what will happen next year. We've added the new paid family leave law, which is still a guessing game. They keep changing the rules. You know. So
So-
it's a guess.
So Clarice, based on discussion we had, if it was last week or the week before, about creating an unemployment compensation reserve, would this then come out next year as well if it's not used, and all of that would go into one big
If
reserve?
we yeah, if we didn't use it and we created a reserve,
But
yes.
it doesn't look like we've used
Yep.
really anything here as well,
It's early.
yeah.
Well, this is only through the end of August.
I know, all right. Are there questions on this line item? All right. Would anybody like to motion?
Make a motion to accept.
Paula and Mr. Walker, all in favor? Anyone opposed? That carries.
I think the numbers on health insurance are pretty much what we're seeing in the market, so.
Mine didn't go up this year, so shh.
Seems 7 to 8%.
Really?
Yeah.
Ugh. All right, next is insurance.
So again, we won't know the final numbers until November. I am worried that this might not be enough, but I won't know until next month.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Chittum, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is workers' comp provided by MEMIC?
It's the risk pool,
It's a risk pool.
right?
Yeah, the risk pool.
Have you considered looking at MEMIC? And the only reason I ask that is that they have historically provided significant dividends. Back a long time ago, I got caught in the trap of saying MEMIC premiums are higher than other workers' compensation insurers. So I convinced my employer to insure with another underwriter. And then at the end of the year, I realized that those excess premiums were more than compensated for by the high dividends that MEMIC gives every year. In the past 4 years, MEMIC has distributed statewide something on the order of $17 million in dividends, obviously prorated to the insurers. So I'm wondering if it'd be worth taking a look at MEMIC as opposed to the risk pool.
So they're looking forward to the future. I know some counties have done it in the past, and they've always gone back to the risk pool.
Mhm.
So it's definitely always something to look at, I suppose.
All right, appreciate it, thank you.
Welcome.
Are there any other questions on this line item? Okay,
Motion to accept.
Mr. Walker, and a second? I saw Kevin's.
Yep.
Good perfect.
I know, right?
I'm just
all-
chiming in case.
All in favor? Anyone opposed? All right, that carries. I believe we have made motions on all line items of revenues from my calculations, and we have covered all reserves. I believe we're moving to the capital plan. And Clarice handed out an updated one earlier. Are we motioning on this or just discussing?
I think you have in the past, but they are all included in the department.
They're all,
Yeah,
we've
try-
already
try.
motioned on
Yeah.
them as it is.
Yeah,
okay.
if it's in this year, and
Yes,
this just gives us the lay
yes,
of
the
land
lay
for
of
5
the
years.
land, okay. I would say we take a moment to look at it and ask any questions, but we have motioned on all items. Mr. Chittum, go ahead.
Well, if we've passed items based on the five-year capital plan before tonight's handout, do we need to go back and revisit those? For example, the space needs assessment, I'm not sure what JFM is that the contractor?
So those will be tonight, that's the facilities, and, I don't know if IT had anything on there, but those are coming up.
Okay, and the plow truck reserve and the building reserve, everything that's changed, or is there anything that's changed of the 5 items in this 5-year plan that we have previously approved?
So the stuff in red was changed by the commissioners, and you've already looked at that. And
Yeah.
other than the facilities, which you just mentioned, because they're coming up soon, like next.
Okay, all right, so I'm a little, you've confused me now, easy to do.
So why don't we table this for a few minutes until we finish the other 2 line items and come back? Or do you want to continue?
We could do that, I guess my question is, why was there a handout tonight?
Because I hadn't changed the one that was in your book with the red, with what the commissioners changed. So I just wanted to make sure you had the most updated one.
Okay, all right,
Sorry, I didn't mean to confuse you.
okay, thank you. It's easy to do.
Try to clarify, but nothing away.
Are there any other questions? Oh, go ahead.
I do appreciate the red ink, it makes it a little easier to see,
Yeah.
so thank you.
Yes.
Is there anything in the 5-year capital plan that's, like, keeps getting pushed out? Too many years of doing the city ones, I have to ask that question.
Kick the can down
You
the
know,
road?
yeah, are there any that are kicking the can down the road that you're concerned about, or that,
This is my first year of the job, so we get a lot of things coming up. I would have liked to had, when we get to the next budget, we could discuss the space needs plan. I put some money in there for that, to look at. The county did purchase the JFM building, to look at how that move is gonna go and how we're gonna use that building. So that's one thing right off the top of my head that I would like to be able to do.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. All right, any other questions? All right, we will move on to IT.
That's what Jack said.
Yep.
Hi, my name is Bob Levesque. I'm the IT support specialist here for Aaron Scoggin. Still new to this, so I'm not really sure where to go.
Well, you had Bob's budget in front of you. Any questions, we're happy to answer them.
Are there any questions? I have a question for you in regards to your consulting services. You've only used 1,500. Do you plan on using the rest of that 15,000?
Yes, it all hasn't come out yet from what I'm looking at from my budget that I already have going. The number is much higher than we've already used for this year.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Reed.
Just an odd question here, but every department seems to have the service contracts and software and hardware and stuff, so how much of it is in here that's not the same, or?
No, every department has their own software that they use for their own departments. Like Deeds has their own certain stuff that they use, probate. They have their specific programs. I have mine that we need, and they're pretty much different from everybody else's, except mine are more global.
Maybe to your point, next year, we put everything in one budget.
What's that?
So maybe to your point, next year, we put everything in one.
I hate to see duplication, just seems like we split it up to make it look smaller, but
Yeah.
it would be kind of neat to see the overall cost for, you know.
And I have a question that we had a little discussion with Mr. Walker about computers and replacement. Do you have a sort of a global replacement plan for
I do.
all
Any
the
new
staff?
computer that we've already got in place, I have in line for when they're supposed to be replaced. I've told each one of the departments who have their own computer budgets, so that they know that they need to budget for a new one next year.
So that's in, I guess that was my point, it's in each individual instead of
Instead
an
of one
IT
global,
line.
yeah. It should be all under one, but it hasn't made that jump yet.
Yeah, okay.
Next year.
Next year, are you gonna consolidate?
It will be in shop.
That's the plan.
No, you'll see pluses and minuses.
It's a lot easier. So when you see this budget, it's a huge jump next year, remember this.
Well,
Yes, but we'll see decreases elsewhere.
Absolutely, you will.
Right.
That's accounting 101.
I would think it would give you more flexibility if, you know, finance didn't need the computer that they put the budget in for, but, you know, someone else does, and now you're just gonna buy a bunch of computers and say, this is what we think we're gonna replace this year. What happens, happens.
Are there any other questions for this line item? Okay,
I would make a motion to accept the 179,200 as
Alright.
recommended.
Mr. Reed?
Second?
Mr. Chittum, and all in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay, that carries. Thank you. Thank you. And the last one is building facilities. This is a big one. Yes. A lot of stuff in here.
So just a quick introduction, I'm David Cody, I'm the facility director here. I've been doing this for 21 years at the county, in the past 17 years as facility director. So this is my 17th time up here.
Lucky you. They only let us do it 9 times.
It doesn't get old. Actually, the past few years has been pretty decent. There was like a 5-year span where it was a little difficult, but we have a good crew right now. So I'll give you a quick rundown of my budget. So if you were to remove the salary increases in my capitals, it's only gone up 1.4% of increases. If you add the salaries back in, then it went up 5.8%. And that's with no capitals. So I did my best to keep it as low as I could. So 1.4% increase, I think is pretty decent. And most of that is just because of cost of materials.
Go ahead.
What's the overall health of the building in your opinion?
Sustainable.
Anything gives you heartburn? Things that could go bad? Boilers?
Boilers is one, but we actually have an RFP out, so that should be taken care of this year or early 2025.
ARPA.
Through ARPA funds, so the boilers will be taken care of. To me, it's the infrastructure, so the roof, the pointing of the bricks. But I was on a plan to get all the roofs done, let's say a 10-year plan, but with purchasing the new building and us possibly moving, we put a hold on that type of stuff. I see us back in 2 years talking about this. If we don't move, we're gonna have to reinvest into the building. But for now, building's good. We'll just keep it the way it is for a few years, besides the normal day-to-day maintenance stuff.
Thank you.
Any questions, Mr. Chittum?
Well, not a question, but a comment. I would argue that regardless of the ultimate relocation of county government to a new building, this is a historical building and needs to be maintained for whatever use may follow should county government move to a new building. So I think that the thinking that since we're not going to be here anymore, or we may not be here anymore, we don't need to put money into it. And I know that you agree with me, David, but just for the public at large, this is a jewel, this building, and for us to forego any necessary maintenance because we may not be here in the near future is foolhardy. So I encourage you to maintain this building as best you can with the limited resources that are available to you.
That's my plan.
Are there any other questions?
I'll make a motion to accept this budget as presented.
Okay, Kevin,
468, 219.
all a second? All in favor? Anyone opposed? All right, that carries.
Did you raise your hand?
No.
Accept, did you accept it or not?
No.
I'm sorry.
You gotta oppose.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you don't.
I'm sorry, I still had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep.
The commissioners have reduced your building and building improvements budget from 32,000 to 8,000. And I understand that was a response to the fear of tax increases on the municipalities in the county. But that argues against the very point that I made just now. If I've got the right line here, buildings and building improvements, that's what we use to keep this building from falling in on itself.
Correct. So the line that they removed was 25,000 from the building reserve account, which if the roof flies off, 25,000 help go towards it to get us a new roof, essentially, with that would be for. It's my absolute emergency line, which I'm gonna have to go to the commissioners for approval to draw from that.
I've established that with a reserve account before too, so Mr. Walker put 25,000 in a reserve account as well, they could cover that as well.
That I don't know. Normally I have 100,000 in my lines, but about 3 or 4 years ago, we used it to offset some other lines. So now I'm down to 0 in my reserve account. So I had asked for 25,000 to start building myself up to the 100,000, which is what I used to have. And then to help the taxes, they eliminated.
Okay, so my point to the administrator about this is the wrong time to build a savings account would apply to this line as well, then?
Right.
Okay, all right, I'm happy then. Thank you.
So we had, by my count, a motion, a second, and I thought we had all in favor.
Well, now you do.
Okay, thank you, all right. All right.
Sorry, I'm hitting it.
Thank you. That's all right, keep punching.
Yes, does anybody want to go back to the capital improvement plans and have a review or any other further discussion on that handout?
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
I would make a motion, we accept the capital plan as presented.
Second by Paula. And we have-
Question for Mr. Reed, is that for the 5-year plan or for 2025 alone?
That's for the 5-year plan.
Okay.
Again, it's just a planning document, so I don't worry. It's a best guess at what we want to do, what the county needs to do.
All in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay, that carries. I believe that brings us to the end of our agenda. Before we do adjourn, next week, there is no meeting. The week after would be the public hearing back here, where anybody from the public would ask us committee members questions, and then our final meeting with the commissioners, I believe, is November 20th. Is there anything we've missed before we motion to adjourn? I've got all the revenues checked off. I think we've got them all. All right.
So, Madam Chair, we will have no meeting tomorrow night?
There is no meeting tomorrow night, no.
Hooray.
I was bound and determined we were going to finish this evening. So there.
Do we get time off for good behavior?
Yes, we do.
All right.
Yeah, not for lowering our taxes, but we take time off for good behavior. Okay. Anybody
Thank
want to
you
make a
all.
motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, and a second, and all in favor? Great, thank you for your service, folks.
Thank you all.
Is it really?
Pretty happy.
I wish there